Welcome back to This is Futbol. And as always, like, subscribe, and hit that bell notification so that you'll know every time we drop a new episode. Tonight, Messi back and forth with Argentina, Inter Miami storm going into the playoffs versus last year, and our FIFA breaks pointless after qualifiers. Nico, you ready to do this?
I'm ready. I'm ready, bro. Coming off that right there. Right there. Coming off that win. Going to the finals, baby. U20. Let's go.
I already know what that feels like, man. We're the reigning U20 world champions.
And we're the team with the most.
All right, let's talk a little bit about the Messi saga over the international break. My take, Nico, it was absolutely ridiculous, right? I'm glad that he showed up for Inter Miami in a seeding game because, yes, the club needed him. But the optics of him dipping out on the Argentina camp and playing for the club and then flipping back on Tuesday and playing the friendly screams, I do what I want, right? And only Messi can bend the calendar like that. And that's exactly what the problem is with this issue. It sets a precedent that nobody else gets. And let's call it what it is, right? It's a double standard. Other players, they get an ultimatum. It's club or country. And with Messi, we get to invent the third lane. He gets both. So it's great for
Yeah.
content, but it's bad for credibility. And going a little further, what kind of message does it send to the Inter Miami locker room, right? Short term, the GOAT showed up for you. You got the points and you love it. And the fan base loves it. But long term, are we a process or are we a panic button team, right? If the plan is that we hope that Messi saves us in between friendlies, that's not a viable plan.
No, not at all. And we knew that we needed the points going into that game. But let's be realistic here. Do you really think that Messi was needed to face Atlanta, an Atlanta team that is absolutely atrocious? They're second to last place in the Eastern Conference. I don't think so.
And they were missing 7 or 8 players, and then had another player that went down in the first half with an injury. That was Gregerson. But I'm with you, Nico. I don't think that Messi needed to be with Inter Miami. Of course, as an Inter Miami fan, as a person who covers a team, I'm glad that he came back because he's obviously needed for this team. He's the MVP of this league. He's the MVP of this team. But again, the fact that he's going back and forth and doing whatever he wants. I mean, what is that?
Yeah.
What kind of precedent does that set for the rest of the team, for the rest of the league, and for the rest of the world?
Nothing, nothing. And honestly, man, the only thing I can think of that made Messi want to play this game, besides the fact that, it was an extra game with Inter Miami, I think it was the fact that Jordi Alba was retiring, that they were doing a presentation for Jordi in that game, all the almost like the banner uh game for a Hall of Fame player, if you want to call that. That's the only reason why I think Messi played, man.
It could be, but I want to take you a little bit more to Argentina, right? Because we talked a little bit about what kind of message it sends to the Inter Miami locker room, but what kind of message does it send to the Argentina locker room? Because you can call it friendlies all you want, right? These were glorified practice games that they played in this window versus Venezuela, versus Puerto Rico, but the shirt is still the shirt. You're wearing it, right? The crest on
Yeah,
there, the AFA is still the crest.
absolutely.
And if the captain of the world champions is saying, hey, I can share time between club and country during an international window, and everybody else is quietly taking notes, right? Is that the culture that you want to start creating around the national team, especially heading into a World Cup year?
Yeah, I'll be mad at it if and only if the rivals that they were facing weren't as weak. I think for the last 2.5 years, Argentina's friendlies have been an absolute joke. They faced Estonia, they faced Guatemala, and nothing against those countries, but Argentina is a world champion. They need to start facing better teams. They need to start facing teams of quality, and they haven't been done so. So I wasn't mad at the fact that Messi did that back and forth just because of that. Now, if they were to face a team that would have challenged more, or if they would have done this in the qualifiers, I don't think they would have.
I agree. I agree, Nico. And we're going to get into that in a
And
little
let
bit.
me let me let me say something real quick. Let me say something real quick. And you're probably on my side with this. You remember when Messi decided to opt out of the MLS All-Star game, right?
100%.
Remember that. Remember the media, remember the fans that went crazy about him, disrespecting the league, not wanting to face, not wanting to participate on the All-Star game and this and that. You remember that, right?
Of course.
I wonder what people are going to say now that he actually prioritized Inter Miami game over his own national team in a FIFA international break.
I mean, you said it best, right? You said it best. There was a lot of backfire against Messi for missing the MLS All-Star game in the middle of the season, especially during a very busy calendar for Inter Miami. And now it's just crickets, right? It's crickets because none of the media, nobody is coming back and saying and giving Messi the credit for missing Argentina's game, for skipping that game and playing a very important game for Inter Miami. So I agree with you. And not only do I agree with you, but I want to know, what do the listeners think about Messi going to play with Inter Miami during an international break and then reversing back and going and playing the friendly yesterday with Argentina versus Puerto Rico, starting that game, playing the 90 minutes. So I want to know what you guys think. Drop your comments in the chat right there. Let us know what you think. We'll get back to you as soon as we read those comments. All right, Nico, enough of this calendar drama. We're going to get into a little bit more calendar drama later in the show, but I want to bring it back to Miami and Inter Miami specifically. And I want to talk about how the Herons stack up for the playoffs compared to last year, right? Their health, their form, and who's actually peaking right now. So let's line that up. Let's talk some Inter Miami. All right, baby. Inter Miami this year versus last year heading into the playoffs. And I'm going to catch a lot of heat for this, Nico, but I think Inter Miami is in a much better position this year to win the cup than they were last year. The truth is, they're not playing better than they were playing at their peak last year, but they're healthier and they're more stable this year compared to last year. And to me, that's what matters most when you get into a playoff bracket like they're going to get into, right?
Yeah, no, definitely. And they're finding form, they're grinding out games, but not only are they grinding out the games, but defensively, they look a lot better. The last few games, we've seen, a solid performance from players like Falcon, players like Noah Allen, even players like Avilés. So you want to see that going into the playoffs because that's going to be needed. We're not going to need just the individual talent from the players up top, like Messi, Suarez, or even Baltazar, or whoever plays with them together. We're also going to need a solid performance in the back, and that's showing in the last few games.
100%, 100%. I mean, talking about form, right? You mentioned a couple of players, but one player I want to point out is Rocco Rios Novos, right? The backup goalkeeper who's been Ustadi's backup for the entire season. He's come out the last two games. He has a clean sheet. He played another fantastic game the week before that. And the question is on everybody's mind and really on Macherano is, who do you start going into this weekend's
Yeah.
game versus Nashville? Because again, Rocco Rios has played two very good games. Ustadi was a little unstable before he got the rest. But again, Ustadi has been your go-to all season. So do you keep the hot hand in Rios Novos, or do you go back to your surefire thing, which is Ustadi?
Yeah, it all depends on Macherano and what he wants to do. Nobody knows what Macherano wants to do. That's a reality. We can see it week in, week out. But if it was me, I'll go with the hot hands. Funny to say, hot hand as a goalie. I'll go with Rios Novo, man. He's been playing fantastic. He's young, he's fresh. He brings that tenacity into the game, and he's good with his feet as well. One of the reasons why Calendar wasn't, in the plans of this team was because he wasn't that great. He wasn't reliable with his feet, and this guy seems to be. He's up there with the study legs.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, getting back to some of the topics that this team we'll say, is better off this year than they were last year. We were talking about health, right? Last year, the ceiling looked higher, but unfortunately, the bodies weren't there. We saw Busquets go down during the playoffs. We saw Bright go down during the playoffs. Messi wasn't 100%. Suarez wasn't 100%. And now the starting 11 has been more available this year, right? Suarez has been available almost every game. Messi has been available a lot more towards the end of the season. Busquets looks like he's in a decent form. Jordi Alba, with after announcing his retirement, had a fantastic game last week. So overall, the players are more available. The rotations look cleaner, like you mentioned, and the roles this year are much clearer than they were last year. So to me, in the playoffs, chemistry and availability is a lot greater than the aesthetics that we showed last year, right? We were the Supporters Shield champions, but at the end of the day, we had nothing to show for it.
Yeah, and they ran out of gas. That's the reality of it, you know? And it's crazy to think that because obviously last year when we had Tata Martino, we can say that tactically we looked a lot better than what we have looked with Macherano. We are still to find what Macherano actually wants from this team or the way he wants to play for this team. But it blows my mind to think that after all the games that we have played this year, you know, with CONCACAF Cup, going all the way to a semifinal, with Club World Cup, you know, coming out of group stage, adding all those games, with you know the MLS, with the Leagues Cup, going all the way to a final, all those games have added. Yet we see a fresher team going into playoffs this year than what we had last year. It just blows my mind.
And not only are they fresh, but they're in form, right? Messi is in absolute MVP form.
No,
It's not
that's
just goals and assists, it's really everything, right? He's been dictating the
that.
tempo of absolutely every game for the last couple of months for Inter Miami. And not only that, you're wearing his shirt. Well, maybe not his number, but you're wearing the Argentina shirt. Obviously, the U20s are in the finals of the U20 World Cup. Congratulations to you, Nico. Congratulations to all the
Thank you, sir.
Argentinians. But Matteo Silvetti is having a tournament of a lifetime. He has scored the goal today to put Argentina through into the finals versus Colombia. A llorar al cuartito. But Nico, Silvetti is in form, man. And we saw Diego Gomez have a similar kind of effect in a tournament, come back and play at a higher form. I'm
Yeah.
expecting that from Matteo Silvetti in the playoffs.
Yeah, same. He's a player that is gonna come right in. They're probably gonna plug him right in. Probably not start because that's a reality. But you know, having that luxury to have a player like that off the bench, which by the way, he comes off the bench in the national team as well. And for the last 3 games in the U20, he has come off the bench and scored the winners. So it's an important player. It's an important luxury, like I said, to have. And Macherano just needs to realize and play the best players out there.
100%, 100%. Well, the bottom line is last year it was flashier for Inter Miami. This year it's a lot more sturdier. They have a healthier core. Messi is peaking at the right time. They actually have a bench this year, a bench that they could bring in certain players like a Bright, like a Silvetti, like you mentioned, as well as possibly
Baltazar.
as well as Baltazar, and they have other players as well. So this year, we think, both of us think that in the playoffs, the versatility and the moments that win trophies, Inter Miami finally have both and are in a better position this year than they were last year.
Absolutely. And let's see who we face. You know, the first round is important. You know, you don't want to get those 3 games. You want to end that first round, that first push right off of 2 games, because it's not gonna give you those, it's not gonna haunt you like it haunted you last season, you know, when you had to play 3 games. You know, you're not gonna bring back those memories. So going into a playoffs, smashing it right away, getting the results in the first and the second game, take care of that into the next round, and the team can make a run. I believe that the team can make a run. My prediction is still the same. I think that Miami's going to go all the way to the conference finals, possibly win it and make it to the MLS Cup. But after that, anything's a plus.
All right, Nico, let's zoom out from club soccer. Let's go international. And let's talk a little bit about whether these FIFA breaks are even worth it after the qualifiers are done, especially for the South American teams. We know Europe's schedule versus South America's reality. We understand that these friendlies feel like content more than actual games. And we want to talk a little bit about what we should change. So let's go there next. All right, Nico. Are FIFA breaks pointless after qualifiers? My short answer, yes. But why, right? I think it's because the calendars aren't aligned, right? Europe still has qualifying windows and commitments still going on. South America doesn't. So we manufacture these friendlies to fill these dates. And what's the result? Low stakes tours, like Uruguay going to Malaysia and playing a couple games, like Argentina coming to the United States and playing a game against Venezuela, a team who is not even in the playoffs, and then a game against Puerto Rico. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. I don't know what you think, Nico, but to me, I think these friendlies after the qualifiers have been absolutely pointless, and I don't understand what it is that the South American teams are doing.
Yeah, and it's honestly money grabbing. They try to, FIFA's trying to make up for, all the games that they're not being able to play. The reality is having 48 teams in a World Cup, dilutes the level of a World Cup as well. And, having to say these friendlies are pointless, is not only enough, but you're also making a huge saturation to players' legs. You're fatiguing players with all this nonsense traveling, unnecessary. They're just starting their seasons in their teams, and it's just not worth it. It's not worth it, especially when at the end of the season you have such an important tournament like the World Cup. But not only are friendlies pointless, I almost feel like in like for example like the UEFA qualifiers are kind of boring too. You have teams like Germany, you have teams like England, you have teams like Spain that are just walking through them now, and with 48 teams, even more. You know, I saw a stat the other day that showed that Spain has never lost at home on a qualifiers in their history. To me, that's insane.
I mean,
Or England has,
when you play San Marino and you
right,
play Luxembourg and Liechtenstein, I mean, what do you expect, right?
right. Right. To have teams like England, in the last 30 years, they've only lost 3 games. This year, right now in the qualifiers, they have perfect score 5 games out of 5 with 0 goals scored on. It's boring. And it's not just boring for like the players to have to show up to these games. It's also boring for the fans because me as a fan, there's no excitement for me to watch my national team on the qualifiers if it's that way. You know, I did read an article the other day that uh, said that UEFA is thinking to possibly changing the format of the qualifiers to make it more like a Champions League format, like the new Champions League, and I'm up for it. I'm up for it because it wouldn't mean that newer teams are going to go to the World Cup. Probably the same teams are going to end up qualifying, but it will mean that you will have a lot more meaningful games. As a fan, you might get Spain versus England and a Spain versus Germany, but then you're going to get those Spain against San Marino or whatever the case may be. But, going to those games kind of excites you.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, look, getting back to what we were talking about in terms of the friendlies. I mean, you mentioned it a little bit earlier, right? Argentina, their last 7 friendlies, they played Puerto Rico, Venezuela, Guatemala, Ecuador, Costa Rica, El Salvador, and Indonesia. And then the next window, now coming up in November, they're going over and they're playing Angola, I believe, and then one other team.
Yes, sir.
So
India.
and
which
India.
which both which both games might get canceled because of the backlash that they received on this window. This window was atrocious, by the way. The stadium was half filled. Even the Chase Stadium against Puerto Rico didn't sell out. And you're talking about the world champions. People should be excited to be watching the world champions play. Not only Messi, but players in the elite. And people are just not buying it. They're not buying this crap.
Well, we got a lot of crap coming up in the next window. Like you mentioned, Uruguay plays against Mexico and then they play against the United States.
Whoa, whoa,
Hopefully,
whoa, whoa,
you
whoa.
and
That's
I.
not crap. That's not crap. I think those are good games. I think those are solid games for the 3 teams, actually.
We'll see. We'll see. Hopefully, you and I will be in Tampa covering Uruguay versus USA. We'll get some content with some players for This Is Football and for some other media networks that we both belong to. But look, at the end of the day, I think we both agree that when the qualifying in South America is up, the friendlies that they're putting together, these world tours that they're putting together to try to make money, these money grab tours, they're just not worth it. And what we want as fans and what we want as people who cover the sport is to see attractive,
Quality.
see quality games, quality football.
Absolutely.
All right, Nico. I don't know if you have anything else that you want to add to today's show, but it's been great to be with you again on This is Futbol. We're going to be back with another episode at some point next week. So don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. And I don't know if you have anything left,
Yes,
Nico.
sir. No, that's it, brother. It's
All
been
right.
a pleasure, like always.
All right. Then we'll see you guys on the next This is Futbol. Laters.